Okay, so in this video, we're going to create the course project, the core structure of that project. Before we do that, you're going to want to watch the Visual Studio options video. That'll walk you through setting up Visual Studio so your code looks similar to my code, and then we'll be able to debug things a whole lot easier. Go back to the video for creating a blank project, but be sure that you name this new project Web2 and not Web2 blank as it instructs you in that original video. We're going to install the system.web.optimization package. We'll add a bundle config.cs. We'll update your layout.cs and your site.cs. Site.css. We'll add a new user.cs file. We'll create a profile controller and add 2 views to that. Okay, so this, I'll be expecting you to have the Web2 project already created. If you haven't done that already, go back, create a new blank project, Visual Studio project, but be sure to name it Web2, not Web2 blank as that previous video instructions do. So just to make sure you have everything set up, in the Solution Explorer, you should have Web2 here. You should be able to look down, scroll down. You have inside content, a nearly blank site.css, but it does have a little bit in there. Controller, you have a home controller with just an index view. And right now we're gonna change a little bit because I want to keep our line numbers correct. Whenever you add new controllers and sometimes new classes, it won't respect those options that we set up in the tools options, where we're configuring Visual Studio to write the code in the way we want it to be written. So in this case, this curly bracket should be there, right? Same thing for this one. So bring yours up the same as I'm doing, and do this for each controller and each new class. So this is the way they should be. Okay, so this is your home controller. You shouldn't have anything in your models. You should just have the 2 files in your scripts. In views, you should have home index with nearly nothing, but a little bit in it. And you should have a layout file. Pretty simple, but it's there. Inside the view start, this should be the name and path to that layout file. We're going to add 2 new files to this project, and they're inside the files that I included for this lecture. Those 2 are jQuery.filedrop.js and web2.js. So highlight only those 2. You don't want to copy these others. We're going to copy those in a different location. Highlight those 2 and drag them into your scripts folder. Okay, so there is a reference that we're going to use, a library that we're going to use, and it's not in our references right now. So we're going to install the system.web.optimization package. So in Tools, click Tools menu, NuGet Package Manager, and in Package Manager Console. And at the prompt, type in install -package, and I would keep the case sensitive, so capital I here, capital P here, and the same for the rest of this. With space there, Microsoft.ASP.NET.Web.Optimization, and then hit enter. It'll go through and install that package. And now it's finished. You can close the Package Manager console, and you'll see that now it is in your references, system.web.optimization. So you can close that references folder. Okay, we installed that system.web.optimization package because we need to add something to our project that utilizes that package. So now go back to the files that I sent you for this assignment, and there's a bundleconfig.cs. Grab that and that only, and drag it into the app start folder. Okay, and you'll see it open up. So bundle config, And you'll see here it's using system.web.optimization. So that's why we needed to install that. So this is a MVC structure. So inside this, what it allows you to do is it allows you to make one line in your layout page, and you'll reference it by this phrase here to add as many files as you want. So in the case of bundles jQuery, it's going to add 4 of these files. Now, the content CSS, we only have one CSS in this, but a lot of websites have multiple CSS files in them. So if we were to add more, we would add them here as well. And we still would only have to include this inside our layout page. Now let's update our layout page. So go ahead and close the bundleconfig.cs. Open in the Solution Explorer and Views, Shared Layout.cs HTML. And just a basic layout page. So we're going to update this. So in the files I sent you for the assignment, there is a new layout.cs HTML. Open that with Notepad++. If you haven't installed that, go out on the internet, and Notepad++ is free. Go out and install it, and we'll use it throughout this class. You'll probably use it. You might already be using it now, but you'll use it in other classes as well. So open that file with Notepad++. Okay, so go ahead and just copy all of this, and you can do Control-A, which selects all, and then Control-C for copy. And you want to start getting used to these commands. It'll just make you faster. It'll make you more accurate, a lot of things. So come back to your layout view. Again, Control-A, which highlights everything. You don't have to worry about missing anything. Delete, and then paste. Okay, so a few things right off the top. This is using system.web.optimization. A few things about this file. You should be used to the head tag inside an HTML file. These are the settings that don't get displayed but get used by that file. The title, almost always you'll see a viewbag.title. We'll go over how that gets populated. This section is using the bundle.config and this as well. So scripts.render, and you'll see tilde, which means go back to the beginning of this website. So here, and then go look for where this bundles jQuery. Now that's a variable. That's not a physical spot, but it's a variable. And it's defined in this bundleconfig.cs file, which is right here, right? Tilde bundles jQuery. So what it says is if you include this, you'll get all of these. And there's lots of these files. There'll be times you'll have dozens and dozens of JS and CSS files in your project. And this is a nice handy technique to help keep you organized. You don't have to worry about continually adding more JS or more CSS to your layout page without doing that individually. So as long as everything is included here inside the bundleconfig.cs, it'll render properly inside the layout. This is it's a temporary library for Font Awesome. We'll talk about what Font Awesome is. It's a very cool thing for images. And this is as soon as the class is over, a week or so after that, this JS file will expire. Okay, same thing, similar as scripts.render, styles.render. So again, this really doesn't have a ton of extra value because in bundleconfig.cs, we only have one file in here. But it's still important to go ahead and embrace this bundle config inside your layout. Okay, so here's our site header. It's not very interesting, but it is using a Font Awesome image. So if you go out, I'm going to come out of the project for a minute and come out and open, or go to fontawesome.com, and you'll see now I'm logged in because I have an account. If you're not logged in, you can still get to these things. I'll go ahead and log out just so that I'm looking at what you're looking at. So again, go to fontawesome.com, right? It'll probably jump you to the icons or to the gallery. And here, just type in something like music. And it'll find all these, they appear as images, but they're really fonts. They're very cool. So they're very lightweight, and you don't have to have the actual images in your project. So what you can do is you find one that you like, and the free ones show up as a darker color. The ones that are paid for show up as a gray color. So as you're logged in, you won't be able to use these, but in your project you will. So don't worry about that right now. So and in this case, we're going to look at this music one. I'm going to click on it, and it's going to go into it. Now, for you to be able to use this image, just click on this I tag, and Font Awesome will copy it to the clipboard, right? Clipboard is behind the scenes. So now all you have to do is go somewhere and just paste, right? So if you'll notice, I've got a little bit more, but this is a little different than the one we just copied. Is just a little bit different than the one I'm using, but it's the same technique for including it in your project. So I'm going to delete that one. So what we've also done, and you should recognize this in HTML, is we're naming this I tag. So this site icon is the name of this, right? The HTML name. You'll see two spans inside this site header div. One span is we're going to create a Tri-State Music Events website. Okay, so, and this is a technique that I use. So I give it the class full content, and then I give a long name, and then I've got another one that's there that's mobile content, and it has a shorter name. Oops, it has a shorter name, and I include a little Font Awesome image. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because when this site header is displayed, or this website is displayed in a browser, if you're on a mobile browser, you don't have as much width as you do with a regular desktop or a tablet. This probably fits in a bigger browser, where if you're on a mobile device, this will probably fit. Now you'll see in just a few minutes how our site.css has these classes defined, and as the browser gets smaller, this span tag is hidden and this span tag is shown. But if we've got a big size browser, our site.css hides this one, this class mobile content, and shows full content. So we'll see that in just a minute. Here is our menu. This is the beginning of our menu. We'll expand on that as the project goes on. Here's a class icon bar, right? So we're giving it an ID, and each one of these are just images, but that will link to different views. So this is the home index. We're going to create a profile sign in and a profile sign up. You know, some of these other things should make sense. So this title, this is the tooltip that you hover over it. Okay, this is the Font Awesome image that we're going to use. And then this workspace, you've seen this, but you might not have paid much attention to it. So this layout.cs HTML uses the individual views. So the HTML from the views will be basically a copy and paste into here. Okay, so go ahead and save and close out the layout in bundle config files. Now we're going to add an updated code into the site.css. So if you open that file right now, it should look pretty trim, pretty slimmed down. So highlight all that and just delete it. Now I'm not using my practice. Control A, right, and just delete. So back in the files I sent you, there's a site.css. Open that in Notepad++. Control A to select all. Control C to copy. And back inside your site.css, make sure you're in the right spot. Do a Control V or Control Paste. So it's got a few things in this. So this is just defining what the body is going to look like, right? So inside our layout page, we've got this section called body. And then this is defining a little bit of margin. This is top, this is right, this is bottom, this is left. We've got site header. I'll bring up the layout.cshtml, right? This div ID site-header. And whenever you have an ID as compared to a class, that ID inside your site.css has to start with a pound or hashtag, right? So this is just giving the properties of that site header. Background color, the color, which is the foreground color, a font size, and some padding. You also see the site icon. So that's the small image to the left of the title or the header of it. So we'll see what that looks like in just a minute. And again, it's just giving a margin right. So don't let anything get any closer than 0.5 ems to the right of this. And then we're just giving it a particular hexadecimal color. Our H tags, H2 tag, you've probably seen that. Workspace, this is basically this div. So everything inside each of the individual views, this workspace controls the spacing and the margins and all of that inside that. Icon bar, we won't go over these too much right now, but we'll talk a lot more about them later. A standard P tag or a paragraph tag. You've seen the section and the item. You saw both of those in action on a previous assignment where we added more CSS. So if you remember, you had a section and each section had multiple items. You should remember the buttons, right? These are some of the properties for buttons. I won't go over each individual one. Background color, foreground color, they're pretty much the same. Okay, so now remember I'm going to go back to the layout.cshtml, and I'll just call that the layout view from now on. You'll remember that I talked about this. This is class full content and class mobile content. So all across the website, I can tag anything I want with this class full content, and the same with the class mobile content. So what this is saying is if I've got plenty of screen real estate, plenty of browser space, browser width more specifically, it's going to display the full content spans as compared to the mobile content spans. So once the browser starts to get small, everything, not just this one, but anything that's got this class full content will be hidden, and then the mobile content divs or spans will all be shown. So here, this says mobile content display none. That means it's invisible. It's invisible until we get down to 48 ems. So everything outside of these media tags are wider browser settings. So every bit of this, I'm just scrolling up, all of this, I'll go to the top of this file, still in the site.css. So everything here is used when the browser is bigger than 48 ems or 30 ems, right? So once it gets down to those two sizes, we begin to do something else. And in this case, since we're talking about this mobile content, so the mobile content is display none until the browser's smaller, and we won't focus on this one right now. So once it gets to 48 ems, then full content is display none, made invisible, and mobile content is now shown. Instead of being display none, it's now in this case display inline. And then the remainder of these media tags. So again, this is telling the browser that as soon as my screen gets down to 30 ems or less, then it's going to use the settings here. Now all these settings still remain until you override them here. So this item tag, if you notice over here, there's a little image here. If I double click on that, you get a split screen. So I'm going to go a little higher in my site.css right here. Okay, so here's an item tag, and down inside that same file, but inside the media only is inside the max width 30 ems, I'm overriding a couple properties. So you see up here, display the item dot item, its display property is inline. But once we get down to 30 ems, we want to make that display property block. But we didn't change anything about these other settings. So these others still remain. Okay, we only changed, and that's an important piece to make sure you remember. Down in the media tag area, only change the things that you want to be different. Leave everything else the same. So since we're doing now you'll see that there's no width defined inside here. But at this point, we make width 90% because these items, the width is just decided based on how wide the item is. So you don't need to give it a width. You just say however wide it is. But here, now we're adding a width. So all three of these properties, when we get down to 30 ems, these three properties are still engaged and still active, but we're adding these two. Now this is a new one, and this one is overriding, now it's display block, and it's overriding display inline. Let's see, anything else? Okay, so I'm going to close my double, come down here. So we're making the H2 tag a little differently. We're changing the padding on our workspace. So this is all because we have less screen to deal with. And a lot of times what you do is you make less padding and less margin because your screen's smaller. Same thing with P tags. I believe at the top of this is set at 1.5 ems, the margin bottom. Well, we want a little bit less because we don't want you to have to scroll too much. And again, the full content is hidden, and now we're showing this mobile content. Okay, I'm going to save all, close both of these files. Now we're going to add a user.cs. So we're going to add a model. We've in this project, we've worked with the parts of MVC. We've worked through the views, right, and the controllers. And we haven't added any models yet. And we're going to be adding several models to this. Let's right-click on models, add class, and call that user.cs. Now this is going to be, to start, the same class that we added in our Web2 blank project. So I'm going to bring that project up. You can import these other classes, these class files from other projects, as long as you remember to change the namespace. So see how this is Web2 blank? We want to name ours, and this one Web2, period, right? So in this case, I'm just going to copy these four properties. Paste. All right. Now we're going to leave these, even though right now they're not being used. We'll use several of these, so we're going to leave them for a minute. So now we have, just like in the Web2 blank project, we've got a user.cs, a user model, right? So save that and close it. Okay, now we're going to add a new controller. So right-click on your controllers folder in the Solution Explorer. Click Add Controller. We want this to be an MVC empty controller. Name it Profile. And remember, always leave the word controller after it. Okay. Same thing. We're gonna bring these curly braces up. Make sure you do this on all of these new controllers and any of the new CS files as well. Okay, so now we have, just because we added the controller, we get an index view, right? So profile index. So I'm going to right click on that index and add the view. Remember, this is just the action result method. We've got to create the associated view called index. So inside here, just right click, add view, leave it the same. Now, the one thing that Microsoft kind of messes up on a little bit is they give you this viewbag.title. So this is the phrase that's going to be used. I'm going to open up the layout page. So you see here, viewbag.title. Whatever the individual views make that variable, it's kind of like a global variable. Then it's displayed at the top in the tab of your browser. So, but what they didn't do is they should have brought this down here, right? They should have done that. Here's what was there. So basically, if I change this, then this never gets changed, right? And we probably want that to be changed. So here, again, and you'll do this in all of your views unless we say otherwise. So the H2 tag should always be this viewbag.title. And keep in mind, you have to do the ampersand, the at symbol, sorry, not the ampersand, the at symbol in order to use it. Otherwise, what is that going to say? It's just going to say viewbag.title as the H2, right? So in here, I'm just going to put something simple. This is the profile index view, right? Nothing terribly important. Okay, back in the profile controller, we're going to add another view. So I'm just copying this index. I'm copying this section. And here's a good tip to copy and paste. Don't try to copy here, right? Or even here. Copy over in this white space where the numbers are, because if you copy it like this and you go to paste it, it's not going to paste in very well. It's depending on the settings of it. So get used to it. It's a good practice to do a couple of things. It's a good practice to highlight here, so you're highlighting the entire row. So I'm copying that, Control C, then put a few lines in place. One of the tough things with C# is you have a lot of these brackets, and it's not always easy to see when you've got one missing. So open up a little bit of space like I did here. And in this case, we're going to, I got to check my notes. We're going to add a sign in and sign up. So we'll call this one sign in, right? And I still have that in the clipboard. Oops, sign in, paste. I still had it. Sign up, 2 views, right? Okay, so again, to make sure, you should get used to seeing these sort of staggered braces as you go through and you're making these projects bigger and bigger. I tend to get rid of this get profile. We'll talk about what that is later. Okay, so now we've got a new controller called profile, and in it we have 3 views: the index, sign in, and sign up. Now have I done that yet? No, I haven't created I created the action result method, but I haven't created the corresponding views. So I'm going to right click on sign in, add view, just click add. First thing we do, take this, and in this case we don't want to say, we want to use good English, right? Proper English, not good English, proper English. So that's sign space in. So now it's going to say that here. So in this p tag, right? Nothing special. This is the sign in view. I'm going to close it. Okay, and we're going to create the sign up as well. Right click, add view, add, sign space, oops, sign space up, Control C, ampersand, Control V. This is the sign up view. Okay, so we have those 3 new views. We're not going to use the index just yet, but we are going to use the sign in and sign up right now. So we're going to go back to, we're going to close both of them. We're going to close this one and the controller. We're going to go back to the layout view, and you'll see down here this first menu item. We haven't even run this project yet, but we know right now we're going to have 3 menu items. One is going to go to the home index, right? So that will be this view, right? We have another menu item. It's going to go to profile sign in, right? So it's going to bring that up. And we've got another one called Profile Sign Up. And of course, it's going to bring that up. Okay, now we're ready to run the project. Go ahead and run it. Now, it looks a little wonky, and that's a technical phrase too. Basically, what's happened is I talked about this, I briefly talked about this in another assignment. The CSS hasn't updated for this website. And I know that because I've got colors and I've got borders and I've got padding and margin that I don't see here. So I'm going to, on my keyboard, I'm going to do Control F5. It's not just a refresh. It forces this website to delete its site.css and download a new one, a new updated one. So Control F5. And even the Control F5 doesn't always work. So if you go for, so in Chrome, you'll have to clear the cache. Now every browser has a way of clearing your cache. So Chrome is if you click the three dots up here, go to, I believe it's settings. I'm remembering correctly. Yes, clear browsing data, and then clear data. Now, depending on how long it's been since you've done this, this could take a couple of minutes. Okay, so the problem was that I do have a couple snippets of code missing, but I went ahead and left the topic about the Control F5 and clearing your cache because you will have to do that. And this exact situation, we didn't have to do. I was missing something, but through this class, you'll still have to do that. So what was missing is, remember when we added the bundle config? Well, first we added the system.web.optimization, right? Oops. There. And we also added the bundle config file. Well, in the global.asax, you have to do a couple of things. You want to add system.web.optimization. And I'm going to go grab a little snippet from somewhere else. We need to add below that line of code. Okay, so again, in the Solution Explorer, I'm going to minimize everything here. And the global.asax, it's a special file that runs when your application starts. And in this case, we're doing the application start event. Now, a couple of things. I'm going to go ahead and make our code similar. So I'm bringing these braces up. And then I added this at the bottom, right? So I added using system.web.optimization, and then I added bundle.config, register bundles, the bundles right there. So save everything. I think I omitted a spot inside this, and if you did this in when you were creating the Web2 project following the blank video over in the Solution Explorer, the properties, you'll want to go into the Web tab, specific page, and put home index as your start view. So if you didn't do that before, go ahead and do that now. I'm going to close the global.asax out. I'm going to close the bundle config, and I'm going to close the layout. I'm going to run it again, and we should be good. Oh, voila, right? So click on the home view, which is the index, right? It's the home index. Click on the sign in. We don't have anything in there, but it is indeed going to the sign in. So we see it up here and we see it here. And then this is the sign up. So sign in, of course, is you already have a login to the website. You go in and just put your username and password. Sign up means you're going to create a new profile in the system. So that's what this says. So let me show you a few things before we add the code for adding these text boxes. I was talking about how we have plenty of real estate on the browser. So in this case right now, what you're looking at is my laptop, and my browser is, I've got plenty of space, right? So as I hold the control key down and scroll my mouse, keep in mind, people don't do this as they're browsing, but they do have that. This is how you mimic looking at browsers that are smaller. Now, if you see something right to there, do you see everything changes? That's our CSS coming to play, right? That's those media tags. So let me show you real quick. So back in our content, site.css, I'm scrolling nearly to the bottom, and right here, 48 ems, my H2 tag is going to have a smaller margin top. So let's go watch that happen. So this is the H2 tag, and you can see it's got this much space. When I get a little bit closer, look, it takes the space away because now it's trying to conserve open, unused white space, right? So I'm at a big browser. I've got plenty of room. So go ahead and give more of that white space because things are easier to read with plenty of white space. But as I get closer, right, as I get several things happen, but just focus on this H1 tag, the margin top is a little smaller, right? What you'll also notice is the name of my website is Tri-State Music Events, right? So when I get too small, then I change it to 3-state, right? So I'm going to act like that's my part of my logo. So this is Tri-State Music, right? 3-state music. But what I did, all that's happening there is, oops, wrong project, is, where is it? This is happening, right? So when we get down to 48 ems, then everything with full content is hidden, made invisible, display none, and everything with mobile content is shown. So I'm going to show you where that is. If you open up your layout page, layout view, these two, right? So both of these spans are always in the page, but we just make sure we show one and hide the other when we want to, when it's appropriate. So full content is shown when the web page is above 48 ems. But I know that's here. This is one size. When I get a little closer, right? So now I'm zooming in more, and I've got less space, right? So less space means I've got less space up here on my mobile browser. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit F12 on my keyboard. That brings up developer tools, and I'm clicking this toggle device toolbar, this button that says make this a mobile device. Well, so check that out, right? We've got less space across here, so Tri-State Music Events won't fit across this. At least I don't think it will. And so same thing. Sign up should be a little higher to the top. Don't use so much white space. And even these icons are a little smaller, if you notice, right? So I'm going to close. I'm going to untoggle that, right? So you'll notice once we get a little closer, even we've got padding around these that we're making less. Once we get small, we're saying, well, we don't want to have so much padding around these menus. So that's why you see that the jumpiness there is it's getting into that 45. Is it 45 ems or 48? I thought I said 48. It is 48. So it's getting into that 48 ems here. And it's saying, oh, I don't have as much space. Let's make things smaller. So we didn't really look at these. So the icon bar A. So I'm going to go back to the layout. So this is an icon bar, and each one of these are anchor tags, right? Just traditional HTML hyperlinks. But what they have when it's a bigger browser, so icon bar. So let's go find that up in the section outside of these media tags, right? So there has to be an icon bar A in the top section of this site.css that have different properties than these here. So let's go find that. I'm going to go ahead and do a split screen again on here. I'm looking for icon bar A. Let's find where that is. Icon bar A right there. So we're setting those properties when we've got plenty of real estate. But when we start to run out of real estate, we're changing the padding. So look at the padding is 16 pixels. We're saying, well, we don't have as much space. to use. So I'm going to bring the padding down to 10 pixels. That's not a lot, but it's enough to make a difference. And then the font size, instead of being 30 pixels, we're making the font size 20 pixels. So it's just bringing, and again, keep in mind, although these look like images, they're not. They're fonts, right? They're just a font, just like an S. So this S has a certain shape to it, right? This font is shaped in the shape of a house. This one's, the font is shaped in an arrow going into a door and a user with the plus sign next to it. So these are just fonts, but it's making those sizes smaller. See, here we've got plenty of real estate, so get plenty of space around them. But once we get to there, right, that's when the magic happens. Not magic at all. It's not magic at all. We told it to do that. So again, nobody will sit here and scroll while they're using a website, but this is what we do as developers to see what it looks like in a full browser. Okay, let's add some code to a couple of our views. So we're going to stop this from running. I'm going to close down site.css and the layout view. Let's bring up the sign in view. Right now it's pretty basic, right? Doesn't have a whole lot to it. Okay, now we're going to add a little bit of code to our sign in view. So if you bring up the files that I sent you, there's a sign in.cs HTML. Right click on that and edit in Notepad++. Control A, right? Control C. Control A is a select all. Control C is a copy. Come back to your project. In the sign in, Control A, delete, and then Control V for paste. Okay, so a few things are different here. This is the model that this view is going to use, right? This view, and the sign in, it's going to have a username and password. Well, those two fields are inside this user model, right? So if we go over to the models folder over in Solution Explorer and double click on user.cs, I have a user class and it's got a user ID and password, right? It doesn't have to use, the view doesn't have to use everything in the model. It can just use parts of it. And then this view is going to just use the user ID and the password. Okay, so this is where the view, the model is defined for this view. And then there's our view bag, sign in, same as before. And the H2 tag is using that property. So we've got a little HTML here. Enter the information and click the sign in button. Pretty simple. This is a new structure. So this is saying I'm going to do an HTML post, right? HTML post. So when you go to a regular web page, I'm gonna bring up, let me close all that. I'm gonna bring up my C state. Why not? Right? So when we go to this page, I just went to this page as a get, right? Which means I go and click a link and I'm going to the page. So I want from the server to give me that. I want to get this page. As soon as you click a button, you're doing a post. You're taking your stuff and giving it to the server, and then the server is going to react to it in some way. So in this case, if I type in Joe Blow and some password that I'm sure won't work, when I first went to this page, I was doing a get. When I click this button, I'm doing a post, an HTML or HTTP post. So this is probably going to fail. It's going to, and then come back and say something's wrong, right? This is the message that says the username password's not right. So that's what happens when you're doing a get. It's just showing you the page. But this syntax, so this is the beginning part of it, and you'll see this is the curly brace to end it, right? So this HTTP, this begin form post is saying when I click a button, I'm going to post everything in here to the server. Okay, so really for a second, forget about what's in there. As long as you know that anything that you post has to be in here. So if I happen to, for some crazy reason, decide to put this password outside of that curly bracket, which means it's outside of this begin form, this will never post to the server. So it will always say, I've got your user ID, but we don't see your password, right? So I'm going to undo that because I don't want it to be there. I want it to be inside the begin form, right? So then, so this should look very similar to what you saw in the CSS project where we added the user model to one of those views, right? We did the same thing here with the section and the item. So this is just making things look good in a browser. But here's the real meat, right? This is the Razor syntax, HTML.label4 user ID, right? HTML.textbox4 user ID. So I've got a label and a text box. This is just simply saying set the autofocus, which means put the cursor in there when the page displays. You can only have one autofocus on a page, and it's usually the first field. Then we have another item, another part of this is the password, right? And so this, we're going to show the user ID. You're going to type in, and mine is Frankie.Baker, yours is whatever yours is, and then my password. Now, password's a little different. We want to put the asterisks or the dots when somebody types it, and this just hides the password from somebody behind you looking at it, right? Pretty simple stuff. And this, but this will just render in HTML. Same thing with this. This autofocus will render in HTML. We'll take a look at that when we go to the page. Now, one more thing that this is doing that we haven't talked about yet. Oops, didn't mean to do that. We brought in our scripts folder, web2.js, right? And in there, I have a function, set active menu, okay? So back in the view, so what this view is saying, and this is important here, because this is, since we're using, since in this web2.js, we're using jQuery, right? And you can see that by this here, this $. The $sign is short for the word jQuery, right? So you can use the word jQuery, and I think it's actually a capital jQuery. You can use jQuery or the $sign. And of course, anytime you can use less words and less phrases, it's always better. So this is utilizing jQuery. So because it's utilizing jQuery, here we have to, we put our function call inside this document.ready. So what this says is wait until jQuery is loaded and then run this function, right? And what this function is going to do is it's going to, just like it says, set active menu, sign in. So it's going to make the menu item for sign in, it's going to make it green, showing the user that's the active menu that they're on. Okay, so I'm just going to run this. I saved everything. I'm going to run it. It's going to go to home index just like it has been. Now, when I click on the sign in, several things are going to happen, right? Now it's green. See, these others, we haven't turned that JavaScript function, the jQuery function on yet for either one of these. But for the sign in, we did. And you'll notice that the cursor is inside user ID because we told it to do that. So I'm going to put the cursor over in password, and I'm just going to hit F5, which does another get. And of course, it's going to keep putting it back into user ID, right? So every time we do another get, and if you do F5 or you click this button, it does it again. It does that get again, right? So let's look, and well, before we do that, so there's my user ID, and I'm not going to type my password, but I'm going to type some characters, right? And it's showing, it's hiding those password characters, and it's doing that because we told it to. So if we click F12, we're bringing up developer tools again. Move this over a little bit. We're going to go down to workspace, open up the form, start diving into these divs, right? Here's the first one. Okay, so this is the label 4, so that's that right there. And if you notice, as I hover here, what's selected, what I'm hovering in the code is selected over on the left, so you can see what's happening. And I see that in this input box, which is the text box, right? Within this input box, autofocus is set to autofocus. So that's the HTML way of saying put the cursor in this box, right? And then the type is text. That's part of a text box 4. Okay, so I'm going to open up this other item, and these are the two divs, right? So we've got the label 4 password, and we also have an input of ID password. But check out the type. The type is password instead of type being text. So text means you can see the clear text that you're typing. If you go type equals password, then that the text is hidden. It's expected, right? And you'll also see where the JavaScript call is in the code as well, right? So it's running that set active menu and it's passing in a parameter of sign in. So it's saying sign in, that's the one I want to highlight, right? So I'm going to close out of developer tools and go back to my code a little bit. And inside web2.js, inside the scripts folder, web2.js, it's passing in two parameters, an icon menu and a profile menu. Now, we're not going to worry about the profile menu just yet. But if the icon menu is passed in, then try to go ahead and for that icon, so this is pound, right, which means it's in an ID of somewhere, some HTML item with an ID, icon bar dash whatever is passed in, this name. So if you look here, we're passing in the word sign in. So what end up is going to be here, this concat. If you look at it and what happens after it's sent down to the browser, this concat is gone, and it's that, right? Sign in, because that's what's in this parameter. So icon bar sign in. Let's go to our layout view. We've got an icon bar sign in, right? So we're saying, since this is an ID, we're going to make this what? We're going to say add the active class, right? The active class, I don't remember seeing that in my CSS. Is it in here? There it is, yeah. So icon bar active, this is some type of green shade, right? So this is invoked. We give it the active in code. In code, we give it that property. So it makes it'll follow. It's basically following the link. But again, these two aren't. But we're getting ready to set those, right? It's pretty easy to set those. Okay, so we're going to go back to our code and let's add. We did the sign in. Let's add the sign up. So you should have another code file. Open up in open signup.cshtml and Notepad++. Control A, right, to select it all. Control copy. Control C, sorry, which copies. And then be sure you're in the sign up view. Highlight it all and paste. Okay. There's not much different except okay, so a couple things. Got to make sign up be sign space up so it reads like a human and not a machine. So a few things are different. Okay, so this email, we're going to get rid of that for a second. So go ahead and highlight that section and delete. We don't have it just yet. So now the only things we're showing are first name, last name, user ID, and password. So these are the fields. Now I wouldn't, this is a little sloppy here. I'm going to bring, I just got rid of that extra space in that underneath that div, and I typically remove this space as well. I don't like a lot of space inside my HTML. Okay, so the same thing, right? We have a model, which is the user model. We've got the viewbag.title, which is used in the h2 tag. We've got this begin form because we're going to post. We're going to submit it up to the server once we add this information. Now a sign up is saying I don't have an account, basically, right? You do this on any websites where you first join a website. You sign up. So in this case, we're going to do first name, last name, user ID, and password. And then we also have a button, right? This button is going to say sign up. And if you notice, we didn't look at this on the sign in. Next to the word sign up, we've got a little font awesome image, right? So that font awesome image just displays next to the word sign up in that button. So now check out the script, right? This script is going to do the same thing. It waits until jQuery is loaded. That's what the document.ready does. And then it's going to run this function inside our web2.js. And in this case, it's going to send sign up, right? So let's go see what that is over here. So we've got icon bar dash, right, which is right here, icon bar. Well, I didn't mean to leave that in there. I just undid my code, so I put that back. This is the way I left it for a minute, and that was incorrect. Okay, so go ahead and make sure your code does not show that for that line. So I'm going to do an undo, and that's the way that code should be. Okay, so again, it's passing in here, sign up, right, into this parameter, and it's going to say icon bar dash sign up. It's going to add that active class, right? So an icon bar sign up ID, right? Icon bar sign up, it's going to add the active class to that, which is going to make it highlighted, green in this case, right? So I'm going to do F5, and I'm going to click the sign up menu item, and there's our stuff, right? So we've got so our menu is following it. Now you'll notice my buttons are already showing our hover. They already have an image in it, which is just pleasant to users. And in this case, you want to make sure this image is doing this work. I'm signing up. Whereas this image matches here, right? Sorry, this is signing in. This image matches this image and doing a sign up. And when you sign up, now you saw before the email address is going to be in our sign up process, but it's just not in there just yet. So that's why I had to delete it from our code. So this allows you to either, it's getting ready to, we've got more code in another lesson, but it's going to allow you to be able to actually, first you'll sign up and create an account on this website. And then once you've created the account, you'll sign in, right? So now let's go and add this code to the home index to make it follow itself. So where is that, right? So at the bottom of any of these views, so either the sign up or the sign in, I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to go to the home index view, and at the bottom of that, now I've got to change that. So what does that change to? That's got to match something in the layout. Icon bar home, right? So if you remember, it's looking for that first, and we're passing as a parameter in these sign up, sign in, and in this one, home, right? Because we're passing, we want to highlight this menu item. And in order to do that, we've got to pass in exactly what we named it here. Again, it's taking the first part. All of these have to have the first part of this the exact same. And then we're passing the last part of the ID of each one of these, right? That's what's being passed into this at that parameter. And when it does, it's changing. So it's saying icon bar dash, and this concat means concatenation, means to append to this whatever's in this, right? So that ends up being icon bar dash home, or icon bar dash sign in, or icon bar dash sign up. So let's come back in, do Control F5 to refresh and check it out. Now, when index is shown, then it's highlighted, right? Just like it should. Pretty cool. Okay, so we're going to end this session by adding the model to the sign in and sign up views through the profile controller. So over in Solution Explorer, double click on Profile Controller. Okay, and as you can see, each one of these action result methods, all three of them do not return that user object, right? So let's start off just with sign in. So if we go to sign in and bring up that view, we're showing that we've got a model defined here, but we're not giving it one. This view is empty. So in order to do that, we're going to add a variable, a user object variable. Okay, so that instantiates the U object, and then we've got to pass it into the view. So this is the controller, and inside this action result model, we're passing a user model into it. And you can copy and paste the same thing here down in the sign up. And of course you have to populate or send the user model here, which is a blank user model, but it's fully populated. It's just all of its values are empty. So I'm going to set a couple breakpoints on those so we can take a look at them. Run the project. So the breakpoints won't hit first because we're going to the home index view, and I don't have a breakpoint set there. Okay, so I'm going to click on the sign in view. Okay, it hits my break. You'll see it still says null for that U variable, that U object, because it hasn't done a new yet. Okay. So I'm doing F10 one at a time. So now you look at this U object, it's not null anymore. It's just the fields are just set at the default value, and in this case a blank, right? The empty string. And then it's going to return that object to the view. Not much different, but at least we're passing the view in. And the same thing in the sign up action result. All right, so this U object is still sitting here null, and once I execute this line, as I do here, F10 once, then your model is populated exactly the way it was populated in the sign up action result. Just going to hit continue. Okay, so there it is.